Welcome back to Healing Hearts. I'm your host, Jessica Holland. Today, we're going to talk about growth. Not the conventional way that we picture in our minds type of growth, the kind where you write your pros and cons of things you've done right, things that have gone wrong, and things you can change. That's not the type of growth that I'm talking about, although that is all good and well. Don't get me wrong. So many times we hear others talk about growth in terms of what's next, what is left, or even what is the next step of becoming the next level you. And that is a really good way to see where you are at. I like to do growth not in lists, but more in a way of asking myself questions. Almost like the Socrates method. I think I'm saying the name right. So today, I'm just going to send you out an invitation as you listen to a different type of question about growth. I named this podcast the 5-year question because that's exactly what it's about. So the 5-year question to me is, would the version of yourself 5 years ago be proud of you today? You're more than welcome. Well, if you're not driving or operating machinery, all that fun stuff, you're more than welcome to pause the episode and just ask yourself that out loud in your own voice. That way you can hear yourself asking and probing the mind in a way. So would the version of yourself 5 years ago be proud of you today? This question is meant to poke your mind in a way to look at victories you have won or victories you have endured. It is a question about celebrating you. It is a time where you get to learn to be gentle with yourself. Because let's face it, nobody's life is perfect, but the journey is yours. The journey is yours to own, and the journey is yours to make it beautiful. It's like a beautiful painting that you just get to, if you want to put a brush stroke here, a brush stroke there, or if you want to start new. Isn't that just the wonderful part about life? I know for myself, 5 years ago, I was overweight, I was unhappy in my marriage, and I was coping with all of these things by being a master of distraction with social media, with overeating or binge drinking, or even just working. I know. I said we were going to be gentle with ourselves. Let's look at it from a more of a gentle perspective, because even looking back at pictures of myself, I know for me, it reminded me how unhappy I was. It was like literally that saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Looking back at pictures reminds oneself of things you may not want to recollect or put reflection on. If you were anything like me, I look back at my selfies from then and I can see the pain of unfulfillment in my eyes being hidden behind a smile that I put on like an article of clothing just for the picture. So as for me, of course, 5 years ago, the 5-year ago me would be proud. Or maybe when you look back and 5 years ago, you wouldn't be so proud of you now. This is a perfect time to face yourself. Once again, in a gentle manner, and know that if you were happier or more successful then what a good problem. Because it means that if you could have achieved it then that means that you can achieve it again. You've done it before, you can do it again. In both situations, with the same question, we can use the answer as information to grow today, to grow right now, to grow this very present moment. Because after all, one of the greatest hazards in life is to risk nothing. So no matter what your answer was, whether the 5-year ago you would be proud or not so proud of you today, you can continue by asking yourself more questions. You can ask yourself, when did these changes start happening that led you to go into a more victorious state? or into a more state of endurance? What did you do when you started to notice these things shifting in your life through all these 5 years? Do you still talk to yourself the same way? What kind of people were in your life 5 years ago? What kind of people are in your life now? What things kept you in that version of yourself? What did you learn from 5 year ago you? Would you ask yourself questions like this and be honest with yourself in answering them? That's one thing about growth and introspection that a lot of people are not willing to open almost Pandora's box on. I know for me, I know in that unhappy marriage, I learned what I didn't want in my next partner. I learned that me not speaking my truth and not setting boundaries with the partner just led me to have more resentment. And the resentment was towards myself. Because if you've ever read my book, ultimately I was in a cult-like religious establishment where that is where I had met my ex-husband now, but my husband at the time. So in this environment that basically groomed me to accept an individual that I truly didn't know or get to know how I should have, I ended up marrying. So for me, that's why it just led to resentment for myself that I was not speaking my truth. And it led me to just continue holding these resentments in my body, and they would seep out with me not setting boundaries with my job, which led to suppression through food, social media, and alcohol. I cannot speak from a successful perspective for the other side of the individuals that say 5 years ago that they were successful, that they were satisfied, because that's not my truth. What I do know is that all of us can use this test to take the test, utilize the things that tested our identity to find momentum right now in whatever we are going through. Whatever we're going through, to go into the next best version of ourselves. Throughout those 5 years, when I look back, I literally had to take off pieces of myself that were put on by other people's perspectives, by other people's projections, and what other people's agendas were for me. And speaking my truth meant I ended an 11-year-old relationship, being married and together with that individual. And there was nothing wrong with him. It was just that it was not who I chose. And I couldn't understand why that relationship wasn't working, why I wasn't fulfilled, why I wanted to love this individual. And I think I only loved that individual in terms of friendship or platonic, because they understood where I came from and they understood some of my obstacles, and we went through some of the same things in that religious establishment. But I realized that that relationship wasn't going to work because I did not choose him. It was like reading the same book over and over and still getting the same ending. And that is what I woke up to when I began to speak my truth. And it was not pretty. It was not a beautiful journey that I can say it's beautiful now because I learned who I am. And I learned what Jessica wanted. But throughout the process, it was a lot of almost playing the blame game of different situations of how they played out because essentially me leaving this marriage meant my son would be disappointed. But would staying in this marriage lead to more unfulfillment, which led me to be a person that I didn't even enjoy being. I wasn't a very nice person. I can say that. I didn't really care much about anything. And I didn't enjoy life. I wasn't present. And now, after taking off all of these things that didn't belong to me in the first place, and as I discovered myself more throughout these 5 years, I know that my son and I have such a better relationship. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that just because you are unhappy right now at the level that you're at, that you should leave your marriage or you should leave the relationship you're in. You do your own assessment and you do your own inner work. Because who knows? What if we're the problem? You know? When we do healing, our alignment changes. And if you are seeking something or some type of fulfillment, when your alignment changes, your perspective changes. So what's the next thing for you? What do you want to accomplish? I know growth can sometimes bring up fear, but think about it. The next 5 years, they're going to happen no matter what. The next 5 years are going to happen whether we stay the same or whether we grow. Time stops for no man. Time is the currency that once we spend it, we cannot get back. And think about it. Today, when we woke up, although we may not look like it, today when we woke up a day older. But the beautiful thing is, you have all of the information you need for growth. Thank God we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I hope that you enjoyed this little mind-probing exercise and throughout the Socrates method. If this exercise helped you, send it to somebody else. And if you had trouble thinking about these questions, try to write it down. Try to journal about them. I know for me, I love to journal because I can look back and I can see where I was and I can see how I have evolved over time. Almost like a receipt. I love that, the carbon copy receipt of self. But thank you so much for listening. I just want to conclude this episode by speaking a couple truths over our lives. No matter how imperfect you think you are, there are people around you that still look up to you. No matter how lost you feel, you can always be rerouted. Just think about a GPS. It never says you're lost. It just says rerouting. That's the same way in our lives. And if there is a circumstance that you cannot control, it's meant for you to leave it alone. Easier said than done. But people don't pedal up a river. They go down the river. They flow. Let nature teach us what we need to do in our next move for life. Thank you so much once again for listening, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, evening, hours, all the above.